We are Iowa State University's Game Development Club, or ISUGDC for short, and I'm your humble president, Zachary Kane. I'm the fortunate leader of an awesome group of designers, developers, and dreamers that are as passionate about video games and game design as me and many of you guys at home watching this video. But being from the Midwest, a thought occurred to me this summer about how we don't really know anybody out there in the industry, so we don't know what it's actually like to make games. So, I emailed up some of my contacts, some of my favorite people I've ever met, and I convinced them to talk to us in a kind of YouTube series, Skype interview, let it all out kind of way about what it's actually like to be a developer living our dream. And that's what this is. So welcome to Biweekly Dev Talks, hosted by ISUGDC. This week is our first episode where we get to talk to a wonderful person named Devon Scott-Tunkin. He is the lead programmer at a studio called Young Horses, who made a small game that I don't know if any of you guys have heard of, called Octodad. He is a wonderful person, has immense knowledge of programming and all the different aspects of game design, but the really cool part about him is that when they made the original Octodad, they actually made it as a college project. So for many of you guys at home watching this, sitting in your dorm room thinking, I can't really be a game designer, he's living proof that you can be. And you should start now and start early and start making anything that you can. So without further ado, here's Devon. Why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction about who you are and why we wanted to interview you?
So I'm Devon Scott-Tunkin. I work at Young Horses, and we made the game Octodad Deadliest Catch. It's out on PC, PS4, and now, today, Xbox One, and Wii U very soon. Also Vita. So I am a co-founder of Horses. I'm a programmer and the treasurer at Young Horses. We're based in Chicago, Illinois. Cool.
So you guys are kind of multi-platform, though, but you started on the PC.
Yes.
Okay. How was that porting to everything? Because a lot of our members, right now we do mostly PC development, but a lot of us haven't done a whole lot of console development. How difficult, or how was porting it over to the different consoles?
Yeah. A lot of it was difficult. So we used, a lot of people are using Unity and stuff, and that makes it a little easier for that sort of thing. But we kind of have our own hodgepodge engine. So we used Fmod, some third-party libraries that help us in our engine that are cross-platform. So Fmod for audio, and that basically just drops in, and we can use this same audio across everything. And we used PhysX for our physics system. It's the same thing that Unity and Unreal use, and they also use Fmod too. So, and then for our rendering, we used this open-source library called Irrelict, which is a C++ library, and it only had OpenGL and DirectX 9 support initially. So we've kind of just been adding things to that. So for the PS4 version, it basically involved porting the Linux code that we had and then completely changing all the rendering code to use their version of their graphics library, which is very similar to OpenGL and DirectX, but everything is named differently. There's little gotchas there and there. But basically, the PS4 version is pretty much like coding in DirectX or OpenGL. And then if you're using something like Unity, it wraps it all, so you don't really have to worry about that. So we got the first version running about a month. Only one programmer was working on the PS4 version. He got it running in a month so we could be on stage at E3. I actually wasn't the one who did that. Kevin Geisler worked on the PS4 port mostly. And then I would say that the Xbox One is actually probably easier to go from PC to, because the DirectX 11 code is almost exactly the same from the PC to the Xbox. There's a couple differences, but if you're making a modern Windows game, the code is going to be almost completely the same, at least to get it running. There's going to be some optimizations, and handling all of the weird OS things is going to be different. But so it's, I think you have to know what you're doing. Unity does a lot for you if you're using an engine, but once you've done like one port, I feel like they're kind of all just like little puzzles where you're like, okay, I know how to do this. I just have to find all the code to get it, and then there's a bunch of bugs. But
okay, cool. So then, with you guys, did you do a lot of the graphics programming yourself? Like, were you part of the people who kind of worked a lot on the graphics programming then?
Yeah,
or
we
do
only have.
you kind of do a lot of different shoes?
Yeah, we all kind of wear a lot of hats. I would say the other programmer like definitely did more of the graphics programming. We like the rendering engine was mostly done. We like had a lot of bug fixes we did to it and extra features we added, but the basic rendering was done through the open source library Erlich. So basically what we were doing was building shaders for it and then adding features and then adding performance fixes and stuff like that, which I did do a lot of too. But he wrote the main shader for like to do like the rim lighting on all the characters and do the basic lighting system. And then he wrote that for DirectX, and I ported it to Mac and Linux for Miguel, which is pretty simple. But then I did a lot of stuff like trying to optimize it for PS4 and Xbox, because really boring stuff involving like setting so all of the variables used in shaders, like passing that information from the CPU to the graphics card side is always really slow, and they're like newer versions of graphics libraries have like better ways to do that. And so we had to like basically like sending all that data in one chunk versus like individually setting it, like all these variables for like the transform matrices and like all the lighting information. Mm-hmm. So just doing a lot of optimization with that stuff. And then the weird bugs we would have, like some shader code between all platforms is very similar, but there'd be like weird bugs. Like for example, like on like one of the Intel cards, like only on Macs, it was like I think it was Intel HD 4000. Like there was just a weird bug, and just had to do with like the way it was compiling the shader. Like it would optimize some of the code out that we needed. And it was really weird. Like it only happened on this one Intel card and only on Macs. Like on the Windows side, it worked fine, but it was so weird. So just like stuff like that. But
okay, so now, so like a lot of our members, well, not even just our members, a lot of people use Unity, and
yes.
Unity does a lot of you can make a game without having to touch anything graphic programming or really like any type of programming. You can do drag and drop kind of stuff. So like from your perspective, like if someone were to make a game in Unity, is there a lot of kind of that programming, this more hardcore programming with the like dealing with that glitch that you mentioned on the Intel cards? Is that going to happen a lot in Unity, or is this more because of the way you did things?
Look, well, for that example, that was like entirely shader based. Mm-hmm. So like that would have happened in Unity if we were using, because we could have used our shader within Unity. Yeah. Like, so that could have happened. They've probably tested their shaders a lot more. So like using their like baseline shaders, there's probably not going to have as many issues. But when you start writing your own shader code in Unity, you could have issues like that.
Okay.
Yeah, but you don't like. Yeah, like so out of the box, like Unity gives you a bunch of shaders, so like you don't have like there's a lighting method that looks very Unity, because like that's the basic Unity lighting and stuff, and you can do that. But Unity is very powerful though. Like you can drop in your own stuff. You could make it look exactly like our game does if you wanted to. Although people think our game's made in Unity sometimes because everything is, and because it's a kind of a simple looking game, but. Mm-hmm.
Okay, because that's actually like one of the things that some people tend to struggle with. Well, because first of all, there's that huge stigma, that game design is entirely like computer science and programming and very technical. But there's so many different aspects to it, and Unity is bridging a lot of those gaps with their tools and everything like that. But even still, if without like knowing a lot about some of the more hardcore programming, such as graphics and shaders and stuff like that, it's hard to know how that can kind of be used in Unity, or like how you can get to it. But like it's just interesting to hear from you that you can actually build something, like you can use a mixture of different things without having to be in an engine to actually make a whole bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, and you can. Like most, like Unity uses .NET, but like most like other engines are like written, and Unity is actually written in C++ behind the scenes, but like the scripting and stuff's all in .NET. But so like, yeah, if you know C++, there's tons of different things you can use. Our engine is basically a bad version of Unity. We have an editor that like is a lot more simple than, but it looks like you're using Unity. Our designers don't have as much. Like Unity is like made for designers and programmers, so like you can do a lot of powerful things. And ours is a lot more limited, so we just have like trigger events that the designers have access to, and we don't even have a scripting system.
Have you done much with scripting, like at all, like, I don't know, in your past or anything like that? Because, I mean, you just said now you didn't do scripting for Octodad.
Yeah, because, like, basically the designers would want a feature, and then we'd, like, add it, and they did, like, a lot of scripting, like, through, like, visual trigger logic. So, like, if this trigger goes off, then they can set, like, all these variables and stuff that they have within the editor, but they're all, like, it's very, like, object-based. But
yeah. Okay, so then, because we have a lot of beginners, and especially this year with, like, we're going to have, like, a whole influx of new people. But, I mean, not even just for our club. There's always new people finding these videos. But, so what is, in your definition, what's the difference between scripting and what you call programming? Because I guess there isn't really a name for all the other stuff. But, like...
at some level, it's all programming. I think at a technical level, like, programming means like you're like directly accessing the OS or the hardware at some point. Like, like the code you're writing is being compiled into code the computer is running. And I think scripting, there's like another layer where the code you're writing is being interpreted by another program which then runs code that has already been compiled. Really, like, scripting is programming. These are all like silly terms, but I think that's the big separation, is just that most programming is deemed a lower level thing. So maybe like you're writing the code that's rendering, or you're writing the bigger systems, and then scripting will like access elements of that. But you could do everything. You could do a whole game without scripting. It would just be programming. But
a lot of our members really don't know like don't know what scripting is. So what is scripting in your definition? Like, or okay, I take that back because you actually just gave me that. What I meant to ask, what I meant to ask was, like, how is scripting used in games? Because we didn't, like, you said there was a split, but how is scripting used in games? Because scripting is something you hear a lot in all different. Whenever somebody talks about programming, scripting comes up.
Yeah.
So, just like, let me ask that one more time for my editing sake, because I'm gonna have to edit that all down. Okay, so how is scripting used in games then?
Okay, there's a variety of ways used. Scripting is usually used by designers to, basically to add like functionality to the things that have already been programmed, which maybe that sounds too abstract. So, for example, if a programmer had made like a thing that could render a mesh, like maybe scripting would want to tie that together with like some actual game code, game scripts and stuff. So like maybe you want a mesh to like move around the screen or walk in a circle, and so you could make a script to like change the position of that mesh, and like the programming might take care of rendering that mesh, and you're really just changing the position of it in the script. So yeah, really scripting is just like a level of abstraction over the hardware, and like there's more than two levels between programming and scripting, but in some sense scripting is basically programmers want to allow the designers to control the game without breaking maybe a bunch of lower level systems that they shouldn't have to worry about.
Okay.
It's the definition of that. But it's all programming. It's just different level of abstraction.
Okay. If somebody interested in doing gameplay, video game programming, whether for like game development, what's one of the best ways that they could kind of start doing that? Because there are a lot of different aspects that go into programming when it comes to like shaders and physics engines. Is there a simple or like an easier way for somebody to get into the programming side of game development?
Yeah. When I was a kid, there was Click and Play, which I think has something like that now. But a lot of people use Game Maker. I don't know if they use Game Maker at Iowa State at all.
We kind of promote it, but
yeah, because I haven't used Game Maker very much, but one of the designers has done a lot of stuff in Game Maker, and they definitely teach it at DePaul as like the introduction to game making. So I think that's like a really great way to get into it. There's a lot of stuff you can try. Like Flash is kind of dying, but I used to teach a class on processing, which is kind of a fun way to get into programming, like graphics and games, little stuff. You can look that up. It's just processing. It's like a Java library, but now it exports to JavaScript because Java is also dying, which is weird because you're writing in Java and then it exports it as JavaScript. But I think Game Maker is a really great way to get into it. I feel like Unity is like, if you could do a lot of tutorials and play around in Unity, but Unity there's just so much in there. Like I feel like it's a little intimidating, but I'm trying to remember what Click and Play is called now. It still exists, the thing.
I can look it up and I'll include it in the description if anybody's still interested in it. But how did you get into it? How did you start doing gameplay programming?
Oh, actually, I guess I started, like, my first programming I did with, like, I messed around in Click and Play when I was a kid, and then I messed around in Python for a little bit before I started going back to school.
There's actually a great library for that called Pygame. That is a really great...
Yeah, that's actually the first thing I used.
Really?
When I was making games. Yeah, I didn't actually finish a game, but I made like a couple little projects that I started. I think a great way to do stuff is like there's a ton of like jams, like there's Ludum Dare, Ludum Dare, however you want to pronounce it, which has become like a huge deal. But just finding like lots of jams, and then like TIG Source is a good forum where like tons of people like first getting into games like start making games and talk about what they're working on. Mm-hmm. But just finding like other people working on games I think is really important to like ask questions and like get help and just like find other people that care about what you're doing, so it's inspiring. I mean, there's tons of resources out there on Game Maker and Unity and Pygame or other things like that.
Okay. So. Sorry, I'm adjusting the camera. Actually, there's, I think, a website called like Learn Programming Through Python. It's like I'll include the link in the description. But it's something like Make Games Through Python, and it actually is like a 12-chapter. It was an online course that somebody offered, but it's a nice, really nice website.
I have seen that back when I was using Pygame.
Actually, the first ever like super simple game I made was made while following those tutorials. But it's phenomenal. I'll include the link in the description, and anybody interested in it can click it.
Yeah, I used Flixel for a couple projects, and that was really easy to use. Again, that's Flash. I don't know what the future of Flash is, but it was good. It was good to learn how to make games on. I'm sure there's a bunch of like HTML5 things that are like that too. I don't know any off the top of my head, but if you Google HTML5 game engines, I'm sure there's like some good ones to like get started.
Okay. So now that we've covered, quite a bit about programming, I'm sure a lot of people would like to hear, like, kind of how you got into programming after college, because that a lot of people, want to go into game design and development, and we just don't know how to or where to start. So how did you get into like a company or starting? Were you one of the founders at all?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess I kind of like focused on it because I was studying game programming at DePaul University in Chicago. And they did this project, which was really good, and it's actually kind of fallen by the wayside now, but it was called like the DePaul Game Experience. And basically they had like 40 students apply every summer to like work on a project like it would be in a studio. And they had, so 18 of us, or 19 of us, were selected to work on a game. That's what the original Octodad came out of, was that summer project. It took about 4 months. So that was really good. And basically, like, without that, I don't know what I'd be doing today. I did work for a little bit. Like the other programmer at Octodad worked at this gaming company. So not to be confused with, the gaming industry is gambling, and the games industry. But a lot of skills translate. So we both worked at a place that made slot machine games for a while, and it was pretty much the same as making games, except for like the design of them was like just math and not actual game design. But and then I think really you just need to like find people to do projects, because the only way you're going to like get noticed is by doing projects. Like if that's by yourself, or if you work better with other people, find other people that want to work on projects, and like know when those people are worth working with. Like you probably know after a few months if like you don't work well together, or sooner than that, or if the project you're working on is terrible. Like maybe like you meet a guy at some gaming event, and he's like I have to make my dream RPG game, and like you quickly realize like he just wants to make his giant game that's never been done. Like get out of that project, find something else. But maybe you find like other people at these game things who are like, oh, like we have all these ideas, you work really well together, and you make like a little game, and like you make another little game, and like that stuff builds up. Like without making a free game first, I don't think anyone would know about Octodad today. But we made a free game, and people played it, and YouTubers liked it, and that was really lucky for us. I think Octodad was just like a perfect storm of like a good character mixed with like an interesting character mixed with an interesting control scheme, and like that really sold it well. Like people like just the elevator pitch that like, so you're an octopus, and you have a human wife and a human family, but nobody knows you're an octopus. Like causes people to pause and like listen to what you're saying. Maybe after that they'll be like, I don't want to hear anymore. That's disgusting. But somebody did once tell me, he's like, I've heard enough. I don't want to hear about this.
So how did you guys come up with that idea? Like, how did it start?
Yeah, we were all pitching like a bunch of ideas in this games program, like summer games workshop, and like the original idea, like the 3 teams pitched different ideas, and the original idea was that you were like an octopus in a robot that looked like a human, and so the controls kind of came out this like, so you were using different levers to control the robot, and so like you had to use like a lever to lift the arm and one to raise the arm. So that's where the controls kind of came from. And then at one point we're just like, well, what if you're just an octopus in a suit? And we thought that was way funnier than being in a robot. So that's how that turned into that. And then, yeah, just kind of spiraled out from there. Like the original prototype was just a tentacle of balls, like grabbing dishes and putting them in a sink. Like that's where the gameplay came from. You would just suction to them like you do kind of now. And eventually, like, we tried a bunch of different ways to walk around, and, like, the one we came up with was the most fun.
So it was kind of like were you guys all involved in that? And did you guys have any designers or writers at all that were part of that?
Yeah. We were all designed and coming up with, like, ideas and, like large concepts. And then, like, we had designers. It was a big team. There might have been 5 designers at the time. Like, we had a team of 19 for the original free game. Yeah, so we had a lot less people actually for like the commercial game.
Yeah.
Because there was like 9 of us working on the sequel. So yeah, there was like 4 or 5 designers, and they basically were in charge of making levels, and then and coming up with ideas for like control schemes and stuff. And then the programmers would go implement like some of these control schemes, and we tweak them and come up with our own ideas for them. But yeah, the designers were actually making the levels, and then there was like a similar number of artists, and they were making the assets that the designers would like play around with, like in like a system like Unity. But we had started with like this. The engine we used the first game became the engine we used for the second game because the other programmer had made his own editor. Actually, no, the first game there was a separate Erlict editor that we used, and then for the new game we made our own editor because it had a lot of terrible limitations. But so we basically were just using like the engine that the other programmer had used for his like capstone project at DePaul because he knew it really well. But yeah, we had separate teams of designers, artists, and programmers. Although we were all kind of like met together for like high level ideas.
So did you guys go through a lot of prototyping then, like with all the different ideas?
Yeah. There was a ton of prototypes. Like originally, like we had ideas for like Octodad would like go to work different jobs. So like he was like a carpenter at one point, and an office man, and he drove a car. And we built like, and there was a level where he was being chased by a giant rock, Temple of Doom style. Like, so there was tons of prototypes. Most of them are awful. And yeah, for the new game, we had tons of prototypes too. Like we're always building prototypes. Like the designers, like that's like half of what they do is just make prototypes while they're waiting for new features, and like, or they make prototypes to try and prove like that they need a feature. So they'll be like, we need like this thing that could control all these stats and like make this like an easier way to like have characters move around or something. And then they'll be like, because we made this and it's like a terrible mess of like spaghetti trigger logic that's jumping everywhere. But
so when you say designers, what do you mean by designers? Like artists or gameplay?
Yeah, I guess on our team and a lot of teams, like basically the workflow is it kind of starts and ends with designers. So designers are the people that like take the art assets and take what the features the programmers have and kind of like make the game out of them. And all of us will kind of work as designers at different points, but like we have right now we have 2 full-time designers, and their job is to like make levels and prototypes, and they use our editor like Unity, and like oftentimes they won't have our assets yet, so they just use blockouts. So they'll use like boxes and spheres to kind of create objects to kind of get a feel for what like that prototype will feel like. And then us as programmers will like add new features to the editor. Like we need like ways to join these objects together, and we'll add like an option in the editor so they can like join all these objects together. Like we need ways to like better control the movement of like 3 cubes or something, and we need a better camera control. We need all these different kinds of cameras. You could program cameras all day, especially in a 3D game. So basically, like the separation we have is like programmer, designer, artist, and then basically in our game at least. The artists are kind of working on concepts a lot of the time for like what the art style will be, like what this level will look like, and some of that will be in 3D, some more than 2D because that's what our artists are really good at. But then we'll build assets for the designers to place in the levels. But usually we'll save like the final like environment art to the very end. So like we won't. Not until we like have the final design of the level layout down will we like build the environment art, and that's just because we build the environment art like as one big piece. A lot of people like build their levels more modular, but it depends on the style of art you're using too. Like if you have like tons of rocks, or like it's a spaceship that has like tons of doors and things that go, like you can be more modular. It works really well. But for our levels, it was more like one themed piece. So we'd just add that at the end.
So then, like your artist did a lot of the level design as well, and in the you said in 3D. Yeah.
We'd have a bunch of blockouts where they'd have like levels made out of boxes and maybe out of art pieces they had from previous levels, that sort of thing. And then when that plays really well, the artist would start making like the final level, and maybe he'd put that in there, or maybe he'd play it and be like, "This part's not going to be able, like, how are we going to model this? That's not going to work," sort of thing. And then the whole time he'd also be modeling like characters and like set pieces and things that they'd put in the level as it like was being built.
Okay. It sounds like it's like how you said earlier, how everybody seems to wear a lot of different hats when on what they wore a bunch of different hats, even with 19 different people.
Yeah.
Is 19 people is 19 people a lot of people to be working on a team?
Yeah, especially for like a game that says Octodad, because Octodad is like at its best like a 3-hour game, really. So we don't really need 19 people working on like a game of that size.
Mm-hmm.
So like we have 7 right now, but we only have 1 full-time artist. So I think we're always looking for like a really good artist to come on eventually, but like we still haven't found one that worked well with us, or that wasn't already working on something else.
Mm-hmm.
So 19 was a lot of people. It was a good experience because it kind of teaches you how like working on a team is, like a big team, like in a real game. It's like a bigger game. Although 19 is probably small for like, I think it's probably an odd size for money games. Maybe like a really big indie game, like I don't know, like Bastion or something. But even them, I don't think they had 19 people.
And that's Supergiant Games for everybody who is curious about them. And if you haven't played Bastion or Transistor, go play Bastion and Transistor. They're phenomenal games.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I don't think they had, or maybe like Don't Starve is like a really big game, so they might have a lot more people like working on like multiplayer stuff or something. I don't know.
I'm not really sure either.
But yeah, but 19 is pretty big. Even 7 is kind of big for indies, but like there's more 3D indie games now. I feel like we're like having bigger indies now. Like there's definitely were a lot of smaller 2D games, I think, at least the last couple of years, and now we're like seeing a lot more 3D games that require more people.
Now, going back to what you said actually earlier, because one of the things that we as a club are trying to get is a lot more designers. Because since we're such a heavy engineering college, we have so many software engineers and computer science majors, and computer engineers. But with the, like, when you said you were looking for an artist, what do you mean by you're looking for an artist? Are you looking for, like, 3D modelers, or environmental artists, or, like, what are you, when you say artist, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. I mean, it depends. Like, so, like, our artist does kind of everything, and maybe it's hard to find people who do that. So he does 3D modeling, texturing, animation, 3D animation, and he does some 2D art. And then like one of the designers is also proficient at modeling and texturing. So he'll do a lot of the smaller like set pieces, especially when there's not a lot of design tasks. And then I have a 2D art background, so I'll sometimes do like UI and logos and that sort of thing, and maybe some texturing. But what like we really are looking for is definitely someone that it really depends on the game. So like Octodad was an animation heavy game, so we had a guy that was just doing cutscene animations during the end. He worked on the original Octodad, and then he came on late into Octodad Deadliest Catch just to do animation, and then he left after the game was over. But yeah, so like at that point he was only working on doing animations for cutscenes because we just wanted to have all these cutscenes. But yeah, when I say artist, I guess I mean modeler, because like oftentimes you have modelers that can't animate or animators that can't model very well. Usually they can do a little bit, but like yeah, some of those skills don't transfer. We'd love to find like a really good 2D artist too, because our 3D artist like is good, but he's not like an amazing 2D artist. Like it's not his skill set. Like he's an amazing like 3D artist, but like it'd be awesome to find someone that was a good 2D artist and could model, so we could.
The like dream that. Artist.
Yeah.
The perfect artist. That's cool. So then, if a designer, came to our club not knowing anything about game design, what do you think would be best? Would it be best for them to specialize in something, or learn a little bit of everything here and there?
I guess it depends. Like, I think when you're starting out, learning a little bit of everything is really important because you don't know what you're good at. You don't know what people might need.
Yeah.
If you're going to work with other people. If you're going to work on big games, like those, like they're very specialized. Like I know people that only like do like final details on like character skin texturing. Like that's like the only job they did on like Mortal Kombat. So like they get super specialized, or like they'll only work on like character attack animations or something like that. But starting out, definitely, I think you should learn as much as you can, because you can't. It's hard to specialize unless you have the experience working anyway. It's like, or like if you get really good at one thing and you can make like a great reel, and the reel is like all your videos of your work, then yeah, just do that one thing. If you're like an amazing tree artist or something, just focus on that. But I don't think you're gonna know right away. But yeah, as far as you were saying, what skills a designer should have, or
well, yeah, I was more just kind of if you had insight into that, what kind of skills a designer could use. I mean, I'd love to hear them, and I'm sure we have plenty of designers who'd love to hear them.
Yeah. See, it's funny because you said you have way more engineers, and at the fall we had way too many designers. Like, so we always ran into the case where like there was like idea people that like didn't have any hard skills. And so that was kind of more annoying. Like we were like, well, like you, like your skill is like you want us to make your game for you. So like we were always looking for designers that like were more like self-motivated. They could like kind of like they could make something in Unity without help. Like they didn't need an artist. They didn't need a programmer. They could make like prototypes without assistance. Like I think all of the people on our team, we really value like self-motivation and being able to be self-directed. Although we work really well together, like we don't have like a strong, like we only have 7 people, so we don't have like a strong management or production role. Like we have a producer who's the lead programmer, the other good programmer, but he's kind of hands off. Like we kind of just talk about what we're working on, what we want to accomplish, and we all kind of know like where we fit in that. Sometimes like the artist always knows because there's one main artist, and like sometimes like the 2 designers will kind of discuss like what they want to be focusing on, or like me and the other programmer will discuss like what we're going to focus on. But like we have like this large separation. Like I worked mostly on the Xbox One port, and he worked mostly on the PS4 port. I worked on the Mac and Mac ports and Linux ports, and he worked more on like Wii U and that sort of thing. So we kind of been separate, but we both can like drop in and help the other person because we are able to figure it out. But back to your original question, like design skills. like I was saying, like being able to do like programming or art like a little bit is helpful, at least on small teams where you're wearing lots of hats. Like you like having a pure designer that can't do any art or any scripting would be very detrimental to a small team. But as far as knowing like what a good designer is, like I mean, like both programmers and designers need to be good problem solvers. Like our lead designer, he plays more games than anyone I know, like at least small games. Like he plays like 100 games in like 3 months. Like he'll play like every little game that comes out, and he just knows like what is, I don't know, he intrinsically knows like how to solve problems in games, like like in a way that I could never do. It's hard to know that if you're not a designer, I feel like, but I don't know where I'm going with this exactly, but
I mean, you can go anywhere with it. Like this is your interview. But I don't know. I did actually come up with another question.
Okay.
To kind of steer away from this. But this one's more how did you guys transition from a would you mind like switching tracks a little bit?
No, go for it.
Okay. How did you guys transition from it being a college-like project? Like you mentioned, a guy, YouTubers. How did you transition from a college project into something that could actually sustain like a full-time company? Because if there are plenty of people out there who, you know, they kind of dream a little bit about being going indie right after college, but that's really hard to do. So how did you guys transfer that without any income right away from Octodad 1?
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult. For us, what we did was, we decided who wanted to keep working on the game, and it ended up being about half the original team, which was about how many we wanted, because we didn't want 20 people working on the game, because it'd be hard to both, like, support that many people and be successful, mostly. So our immediate goal was, and this was kind of the early days of Kickstarter, was to do a Kickstarter not so much to pay for like making the game, because if we paid ourselves salaries, like Octodad would have cost $500,000 at the least. Like it could have cost $1 million easily to make it. But we couldn't have got that money out of college. We couldn't have got that money even having like a cult free game hit. So like, I think you definitely need to have something to show, or something to attach your name to. And we had this free game. It was nominated for a student award in the IGF, and it was on Kotaku, and a lot of people had played it, or at least watched someone play it on YouTube. And so we had that going for us, where people knew what this game was. Some people thought it was just a joke, and they didn't really want to see more Octodad. Other people really caught on to like the charm in Octodad and the story, and like what we were trying to do with it. So finding those fans, we decided to do a Kickstarter. We only asked for $20,000 because we figured that was like the least amount of money to basically not really to support us, but to tell us that this was worth making. Like, if this many people will give us money for a Kickstarter, then we think it's worth making. Mm-hmm. And I think Kickstarter is a good way to do that. Like, it's too often people are like, oh, like you shouldn't do Kickstarter, like unless you can get like the full amount of money for your game. Or people get mad when games ask for less money than it'll cost to make it, but they'll never get the money if they ask for how much it'll actually cost to make it.
Yeah.
So and also we needed money like for marketing type stuff. So like we went to like a lot of different conferences. So we used the Kickstarter money pretty much only for like going to PAX, getting a booth at the Indie Mega booth, getting a booth at PAX, getting a booth at other things. We submitted to a lot of things. We submitted to Indiecade. We never got accepted. But we submitted to Indiecade, we submitted to IGF, we submitted to a bunch of other things. So basically, we got money to like submit to things and to have people take the game to conferences. Mm-hmm. So that's what the Kickstarter was for. And so, like, once we knew people were supporting Kickstarter, we're full focus on the game. And so, $20,000 wouldn't have sustained eight or nine people working on a game for 2.5, 3 years. So more than half the team had full-time jobs, and I was pretty much just working nights and weekends on the game. The lead artist and lead designer were working full-time on the game, so they were working 40-plus hours, mostly through development. And they had some savings, which they worked off of for most of the game. Mm-hmm. And then the artist also like worked odd jobs for his dad, doing construction. But during the end, the full-time employees, like we basically like loaned them enough money to pay rent. Mm-hmm. And then like they agreed, like after the game came out, like they'd pay us back like with a percentage extra out of the Octodad money.
Yeah.
So that ended up working really well. So like those working full time, maybe I couldn't work more than 30 hours a week and work a full time job. So like I would be giving my money so so they could work like 40 or 50 hours, and that ended up working really well for us. So yeah, we had a lot of growing pains, I guess, becoming a company, and a lot of it like had to do with like kind of like changing roles. So like the lead artist on the first Octodad game, we decided like he wasn't the lead artist on the second game, mostly because his dedication wasn't the same as like the other artist.
Okay.
And I don't think that like worked out very well, because like he lost like that level of creative input where he felt like we weren't taking his ideas, and he no longer had as much control over the art direction that he used to. And so like he ended up leaving a few months after we really started working on Octodad, because like just wasn't satisfied with the art direction, wasn't satisfied probably with like his production, because he wasn't working very much. So that didn't work out. And I don't know, that like there wasn't a lot of good communication during that time, so he kind of just left, and like we're like, are you still working on this? And he's like, no. So that was over. But we'd already like given him a lot of shares in the company, which was probably a mistake to do that before the game was over. But I mean, he still did a lot of work on the first game, and he had a big input on it, so he deserved some of that. But like other things, like the two of the guys that didn't have jobs, like ended up having some health issues during development. Like one of them needed a root canal and like didn't have any money, so we had to like loan him some extra money to get a root canal. He eventually ended up having to get his gallbladder taken out, probably because like of his terrible eating habits. Like during the production of the game, like he was just not eating healthy food because that's what you do.
Yeah, that's what indies do. You know,
yeah,
they make all the sacrifices they can to make the game.
There's a risk there when you're not making a lot of money and you're, I don't know, like, and you want to eat food that tastes good. So, I don't know, like we took every opportunity we could get. Like getting involved with Sony was kind of like. We just like really like they talked to us at first, and we just really chased that because we knew that was a good opportunity. So like as soon as we knew there's a possibility for us to be on stage at E3, like we worked to have the game running on PS4 as early as possible.
Yeah.
And like Sony didn't give us any money, but like just the marketing of like being them promoting us at E3 and having us at a bunch of events, because there wasn't a lot of games running on PS4. So having our game running on PS4 allowed us to have our demo on the kiosks at Best Buy and Walmart and Target. Like, even though like maybe we wouldn't have had that opportunity. So a lot of games that use Unity like couldn't do that because Unity wasn't running on PS4 yet at that point.
Yeah.
Like that was that was probably the biggest benefit of having our own engine, which was purely a timing luck thing. But because we had our own source code, like we were able to get on the platform sooner and take those opportunities. I'm not saying that like that would happen again, but that just ended up that way. Of having our own engine gave us that. Like figuring out who was leading the company. Like we went through we switched CEOs a few times.
Really?
And it was mostly just based on like if someone was like CEO but then they weren't working very much, like people kind of like started like being like, why should we listen to you? So like finding someone that like we could all agree should be like the leader of the company, and that was also really accepting of like everyone's ideas and stuff was like took some figuring out, but eventually like we think Phil was the best choice for our CEO. I ended up being the treasurer just because nobody wanted to do it. So I guess like I'm a CFO, and it's kind of weird because I don't have any accounting background.
Out for you.
Yeah. But we had like some other issues, like where like some of we had 3 designers originally, and like one of them ended up leaving. But like it was kind of awkward because like we didn't really need 3 designers anymore, but he ended up getting a job offer at the same time. But I don't know, like we kind of feel like failures because like we never like got him up to the level of like maybe the other guys, and like I don't know. So there's always issues when like you can't like all just be friends and making money. Like you have to make hard decisions sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. There's a lot of growing pains, but I think we became like stronger both as friends and as a company like throughout the process.
Cool. I really don't have too much. We're actually running a little bit long on time. Thank you for that. But before we go, I asked this to everyone, but you have to give us your favorite game ever of all time. Okay.
I guess it would be. So I'm 31, so I'm older than the other guys. So my favorite game is Ultima 7, which is a really old 90s game. It's an RPG. The runner-up would be Day of the Tentacle.
That's a good one.
Those
good
are my
old
two
Lucas, not films, Lucas Arts.
Yeah, those are my 2 favorite games.
Actually, believe it or not, in the other interviews that are going to be up, you've actually given us more recent ones than some of our other interviewees.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, no, people have been in this industry for a while.
Oh, yeah. I guess I'm the old man on our team. Like, so the two of us are 31, like everyone else is like 27.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been, like, they're bringing up games, like, you actually brought up a game, you brought up games I've heard of. I have had now, like, some of our other interviews, like, they are bringing up games, like, from, like, text-based, like, old school, like, before, like, internet, when you would have to connect directly to somebody's computer, like, yeah, it's interesting, to say the least.
Cool. Yeah.
But either way, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and listening. You've actually given a ton of insight into like what indie development is like, especially out of college, and how much what you're doing in college really can benefit what you do, after college. So thank you so much. I think you've given us a ton of insight.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for interviewing.
Yeah, no problem. And welcome to the very first Hensley of BWDT. I am your host, Zachary Kane. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this video. This is the first one in the series. I really hope that you guys are excited about this as I am. Oh man, this is so much fun. This is so great. It's so exciting. But a huge shout out to Devon for taking the time to talk to us about this. You are such a great guy. I'm sure you're a phenomenal programmer and you're living the dream so many of us are chasing. So thank you so much for that. And make sure you guys check out Octodad if you haven't already, because this game is phenomenal. Octodad is a freaking laugh and a half, guys. It is so much fun to be, like the story's hilarious, the gameplay's great, it's so much fun to play with your friends. I highly, highly recommend you guys check it out. Oh, and I really hope you guys like the t-shirts. The t-shirt that I wore, because first of all, I love this t-shirt. Second of all, if you guys love this t-shirt, there's a website called The Yeti that is one of my, I love theyeti.com so much. They have great, wonderfully nerdy t-shirts like every single day. There's a new one every single day, and that's why every single one of these episodes, that I'm doing, for BWDT, I am going to be wearing a different Yeti t-shirt. Freaking go check them out. I love this website so freaking much. I own like 16 of their t-shirts or something like that. But yeah, click on the Yeti's face, if you guys want to be taken to the website and check it out. Other than that, though, I don't have too much to say. I'm signing off.